Hey guys and dolls, welcome back to my channel. I see I've got some new subscribers, so a very warm welcome to all you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you who take time to stop and just watch one of my videos. But this is a story time. Let's see, if you don't like weirdness, I know I'm a little weird and I can be a little dark, so if you don't like my darker stories, you probably won't like this. But this is a story time, and this is going to be about people throughout history who just wouldn't die. And I came across this because I don't know why I was thinking about this, but one of my sisters a long time ago got married, and they've now divorced, thank God. He was very abusive. Well, he was shot like 5 times and he didn't die. So I don't know why I was thinking about that, and I just went online and I wanted to see if there were others like that. And lo and behold, there are. So if you would really like to know what I found out, keep on watching. I'm going to be reading. This article was written by Samantha L. I wasn't able to get any more information on her, but yeah. Let's get started without further ado. And before I forget, please comment, like, subscribe, become a part of my sub hub. I would love to have you, and it's absolutely free. And yeah, with that said, number 1. She titled all of them, so I thought that was really cute. And this is going to the beginning of people throughout history who just wouldn't die. Number 1. Receive my soul. Anne Green was sentenced to death by hanging for murdering her bastard child and hiding the body in her boss's house. Seems a little grim, but it was 1650, and what was an unwed mother to do? She was taken to the gallows and fitted with the noose. Her chilling last words were, "Sweet Jesus, receive my soul." The hangman kicked the stool from her feet, and Anne's body hung for half an hour. Anne Green had always proclaimed her innocence, and her friends were on her side. To quicken her death, they thumped on her chest and hung her with her weight upon her legs, lifting her up and pulling her down again with a sudden jerk. Thankfully, someone stopped the madness. They cut her down and put her in a coffin, which was to be delivered to a doctor for research. As the doctor began cutting her open, he got a quick surprise. One touch of the scalpel on her chest, and Anne's corpse let out a groan. Stomping on her chest, the force so strong, it ended up jump-starting her heart. Whichever you prefer, it doesn't change the happy ending to the story. Anne was declared innocent of her crimes, and she lived a long life, bearing 3 more children. She took a licking and kept on ticking. Okay. Number 2, slip and fall. It was a crisp fall day in 1571. Matthew Wall was a local farmer, and he was on his way to his funeral. Why, you say? Well, the whole village of Brogging in Hertfordshire was there, and it's rude not to show up to one's funeral, don't you think? The villagers who were walking to the event, Wall was getting carried by 4 pallbearers in a coffin. As they neared the church, one pallbearer slipped on some wet leaves and dropped the coffin. Everyone in the crowd jumped as they heard the coffin crashing down, but they would be even more spooked by what they heard next. Knock, knock, knock. They opened the coffin, and Matthew Wall appeared alive and well. He had come back from the dead and had not wanted to be buried that day. He went on to live another 24 years after the incident. October 2nd, the day of the funeral, is celebrated in Broggin Village as Old Man's Day. The celebration consists of children sweeping leaves from the front of the church to prevent another accident. So weird. Okay, number 3, the ring. Dr. John McCall was a doctor in 18th century Lurgan, Ireland. His wife, Marjorie, had fallen ill with a fever, and being the 18th century, that was a cause for death. The McCalls were a well-off family, and naturally that meant Marjorie had been wearing an expensive gold wedding ring. At the time of her death, many had tried to remove the ring before her burial, but each to no avail. Her finger had swelled, making it impossible so she was buried in Shankill Cemetery to prevent spreading of her sickness. News of Marjorie's ring had spread through the town, and some grave robbers went to work digging up her coffin. They were overjoyed when they found the valuable ring on the woman's finger. They tried to remove the ring from her finger, but only found failure. The two agreed the only resolution was to saw off the whole finger. When the sharp blade dug into Marjorie's skin, she came back to life, shrieking in pain. The grave robbers were startled and fled, leaving Marjorie all alone. She climbed out of her grave and headed home. Across town, Dr. McCall was living his life as a widower, not knowing yet of his wife's fate. Knock, knock, knock. Dr. John answered the door and was greeted by his wife. He immediately dropped dead. His fate was sealed in his wife's coffin, and he was buried in the very grave Marjorie had just escaped from. Well, that's one way to end a marriage. Number 4, Indian burial ground. It was 548 AD, and the Christians of Iona, Scotland, decided it was high time to build a chapel on an ancient burial ground. As we know from every horror film, this is a bad idea. The Christians went on anyway, but they came across a problem. Each morning they would wake up to discover the work they had done on the chapel the previous day was destroyed. That's when a man named Columba had a brilliant idea. They should bury someone alive in the foundation. We don't see the logic here, but apparently Odrin did. He was a monk and Columba's brother, so we're assuming he volunteered to be supportive, with the promise that he'd be safe. They put Odrin underground and it worked. The chapel was finished. Now, as we know, there are two sides of every story. If you ask Columba, he'd tell you he missed Odrin and he freed his brother. Odrin had revealed much wisdom from his death. There is no such great wonder in death. There is no hell as you suppose, nor heaven that people talk about. Deep. However, Odrin's side does go a little more like this. Odrin awoke to life. He began to escape his grave when Columba spotted him. Columba shoved Odrin back down into the earth and covered the pit. Whoever you believe, we can all agree these two needed to attend family therapy. Lots and lots of therapy. Oh my God, okay. Number 5, saint or not? If the name Thomas Kempis sounds familiar, it's because you know him or you know his work as the Catholic monk who wrote The Imitation of Christ, although it's a subject of much debate. In 1471, he died in Zwolle, and church authorities began to debate whether or not he would make a good saint. They exhumed his body and had planned to go forward with his canonization, but they found scratch marks inside the coffin and splinters underneath Thomas's nails. This man was no saint. He was trying to escape his fate of death. Were they going to completely ignore the holy miracle of his resurrection after death? Yes, Thomas was denied canonization, never becoming a saint. I am so confused right now, but yeah. Saint or not, I don't know. Number 6, final breath. In April 2011, a 65-year-old Malaysian man, Sui Hok, had gotten into a fight that landed him in the hospital. After spending 45 minutes doing CPR, they gave up. At 11 a.m., he was pronounced dead until 2.5 hours later, he took another breath. Yeah, that's one man who loves life. Okay, number 7. Ready for burial. In February 2010, a 45-year-old Colombian woman in Cali, Colombia, was declared dead, and we mean dead. The death certificate was signed and her body was on its way to a funeral home to be prepared for burial. A worker began to inject the lifeless body with formaldehyde preservative, and it did something that has never happened before. It brought her back to life. I don't even know what to say about that one. Okay, number 8. It's cold in here. During the summer of 2011, an 80-year-old man in the Eastern Cape died from complications after having an asthma attack. His family called the morgue to fetch the body, which was being stored in a refrigerated compartment to cool. 21 hours had passed and the family began planning the funeral arrangements at the facility when they heard someone yelling for help. Everyone thought it was a ghost, so naturally they called the ghost police. I mean the police. They called the police. And they discovered the old man was in the freezer alive and well. Number 9, waiting in line. In June of 2009, a man called an ambulance when his 84-year-old wife fainted. The ambulance rushed her to the hospital where the emergency service doctor declared the woman dead. Her body was sent to the morgue where the woman lay deceased for several hours. Luckily, there was a line for the embalming services that day because this woman was not ready to go. Life burst back into her body and the morticians noticed the body bag moving. They unzipped the bag and found all the woman's vital signs to be working. Well, I guess putting her in a body bag maybe scared her to death and she woke up. I don't know. That I don't know if I believe that one, but yeah, God. Oh, number 10, a new mother. 2009 was quite the year for this soon-to-be mother in Kuwait. She was giving birth to her baby by cesarean and shortly would be pronounced dead. Her husband had a mix of emotions as he was greeted with his newborn baby and a death certificate. His wife's body was taken to the morgue where she was stowed away for about 2 hours before she awoke. Terrified of being locked in a cold, dark area, the woman began screaming and banging, hoping someone would come along and free her. A worker had finally come to rescue the woman and her husband was called back to the hospital to return her death certificate. The happy family were reunited and able to start their life together. Well, that was number 10. And let me tell you, I'm glad it was a happy one. I don't know what it is about people and clinging to life. I mean, hopefully when I pass away and I go, I stay gone. But those are the 10 people who just in history who just refused to die. I hope you enjoyed that. It was really eye-opening for me. I don't know if they're true or not, but it was really weird and really interesting, and I hope you found it to be interesting as well. So this is the end of my video, guys. Make good decisions, love your life, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.